Welcome to the Spawn Chunks, episode number 94 for Monday, June 22nd, 2020. My name is Joel Duggan, and joining me, as always, is Johnny, aka Pixel Riffs. Hello, sir.
Hello folks, and welcome to the Nether Update waiting room, which is what I've designated this podcast. Well aware, of course, that some people who are listening later in the week may be listening to this from the future and have got the Nether Update already. I hope it's treating you well. But in the meantime, if you want to listen to the Render Distance, the extended version of the podcast, so you can hear why exactly my voice is a little bit gravelier than usual, and hear Joel's plan for a satisfactory, inspired Minecraft Hyperloop, you can get that at patreon.com/thespawnchunks. Oh, it's been a week.
It has been. And I actually, as I mentioned quite a bit in the Render Distance, I haven't played Minecraft this week. Once I heard that the release date was tomorrow for 1.16, and I had this other game, Satisfactory, I wanted to play, I just took a break. So I haven't done anything Minecraft related this week, but that works out because you have done something phenomenal with Minecraft this week that I'd love for you to share with everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, no, on balance, I feel like I have taken up the slack a little bit, and I have been doing a lot of Minecraft. I think if anything, I'm feeling more motivated to play Minecraft knowing that the update is so close, because it's not that kind of the malaise that comes with waiting and not knowing. You know, at this point I'm like, prep, you know, we need to get ready. But that included this charity stream that I mentioned at the end of a couple of our previous shows. This Saturday, my wife and I streamed for 10 hours, 10 plus. It was going to be 8 hours originally, but we met a bunch of our fundraising goals, smashed them, in fact, with the help of my community, and I imagine the Spawn Chunks community came out for that, and various other folks that I know online have been really, really generous and helpful in supporting the stream. We raised $11,370 at the last count. I'm fairly certain that has remained the same. I don't know if we've had anybody else snuck in at the last second, but that was all going to the Loveland Foundation, who is one of the other organizations that I'm also donating my channel revenue, my Twitch revenue, and so forth to this month. But we did an extra fundraising stream for them. So the Survival Guide world now has a diverse forest of trees and mushrooms for basically everybody who donated. Anyone who showed up above a certain threshold of donation, like above $10, got you a tree planted, and we put signs on some of the trees. I was building custom trees for people who are able to give a little more generously. And yeah, we had some phenomenally generous people show up to the stream, and we now have this whole area, this dark oak forest that I cut down, thinking, I reckon maybe we'll fill this over the course of 8 hours. It was looking pretty full after like 2 or 3. But yeah, we had a great time, and as a result, because we hit our fundraising goal, doubled and more our fundraising goal, I'm going to be making the Survival Guide world available as a world download, probably around the time this show goes out to everybody. I'm planning on doing a little bit more work on it this afternoon, just getting it ready for download, and then it will be hosted in various places. I'll have a video up on my YouTube channel all about it. So if you're interested, if you've been following along with my Minecraft shenanigans for the last little while, I will probably give a link to Joel, so that if it's out already, you can pop it in the show notes, or just post on the Twitter, I guess. But yeah, that was the main kind of milestone that we wanted to hit, and we went further. We respawned and fought the Ender Dragon, which meant 5 of the obsidian towers I had completely mined out got regenerated live on stream. So my end is now looking very much like it used to, and I still have all the obsidian, of course. It's not like it pulls it all out of my chests to rebuild those towers, but man, yeah, that was a lot of work we did a while ago, and I guess I can just go and mine them again at some point. I had some plans for it eventually. But yeah, respawn and fought the Ender Dragon on stream. That was great. I also want to just give a big thank you to my wife, Christina, who doesn't really play Minecraft all that often, but we played some co-op Minecraft dungeons, and she was there in the Survival Guide world with me the whole time, helping to plant some trees and stuff, and she was an absolute trooper, considering she's not all that familiar with Minecraft. And we had some weird issues with my laptop, which she was playing on, not being able to type stuff without deleting it for a while. So she was having to plant the trees, and then I have to go and write the signs, and it was chaos for
weird.
a bit there. But yeah. No, it all sort of smoothed itself out a little bit later. I think just giving the machine a kick, or just rebooting it or something had helped. But yeah, it all went super, super well. We are still reeling from the sheer amount of generosity that we had and the outpouring of love and support we felt on that stream. It was truly humbling and very, very special to us. So yeah, so that's why my voice sounds like this. Between that and my latest survival guide video, which once again I wanted to get out before the Nether update happened, because I knew that the Nether update is just going to completely overwhelm anything else I had planned already, because there's new stuff to go and explore and check out, and us YouTube folks, we like to keep on top of these things. So I spent basically all of last night into the morning finishing my 303 questions about Minecraft video, only a few of which I got wrong, as my comments section is now informing me. Apparently, around the time I was editing the clip where I said, I don't think you can make a TNT duplicator with honey blocks, Ilmango was publishing a video where he made a TNT duplicator with honey blocks. So, once again, all of this man's gonna end my whole career, the memes come out in the comments section. But that was great, and I'm really happy to have got that milestone past me, because a lot of people have been looking forward to that video for a long time. And yeah, I feel motivated to play Minecraft again, and knowing that the update is coming tomorrow, yeah, I'm in my groove right now. It feels very, very good.
Before we get into what's coming tomorrow, you added a really excellent story to our news rundown that I'd like to share now. Mojang commemorates Juneteenth and supports the Black community. On Friday, June 19th, all proceeds and sales from Minecraft Dungeons, and the Minecraft Marketplace went to support Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, Equal Justice Initiative, and the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund. So lots of support in the Minecraft community between yourself and Christina, and even Mojang doing some really, really cool stuff. There also was a little note in this article that I wanted to share as well, where Mojang reached out and said, thanks to help from our partners, such as Amazon, who have waived their royalty free during the donations, allowing the donations to go even further. So some pretty big companies getting involved and making it possible for donations to these important organizations. And dude, I just think, like, I really have a lot of respect and admiration and just gratitude, I think, for what you did this weekend. And it's a really cool thing when you're working on a podcast, you're being part of a community like this, and it is a video game. And sometimes when there's things in the world that make you kind of like look at what you're doing professionally, it's like, well, is this really something that is important? And then you get to see things like this, what you and Christina did on the weekend, when Mojang as a responsible company is doing this kind of things. It really hammers home that you're part of a community, and that community can make a difference. And I think it was a nice reminder over the last week, I think, to have both of those things for me.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many people have said it so far, but thanks for doing what you did, because I just think it's fantastic.
I obviously, like, being British and wanting to deflect any kind of praise anyway, but also I really want to emphasize the role that my community has played in all of this. They're the ones giving generously. We're providing a place for everybody to come together, sure, but at the end of the day, it's the people who've been watching the streams and checking this stuff out and donating to worthwhile causes and stuff. It's very, very important to us, and the community has stepped up in unimaginable ways over the last little while. So it really should be a shout out to them.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to talk about the pre-releases and the release candidate, which is a brand new thing.
Yeah, that's brand new. I wrote down a couple of quick bugs just because pre-release 7 and 8 happened over the course of the week. Mm-hmm. They didn't happen like all of this kind of stuff happened between last show and this show. And so there's not a lot to talk about in the pre-releases, just a couple of bugs I thought were worth mentioning. Skeletons not spawning frequently enough in Soul Sand Valleys has been fixed. Unable to jump over a one high block from flowing lava that has a level of 3 or lower has been fixed. So people were getting stuck in lava and dying. That's not good. And textures and other bug fixes galore. You can see the full list from pre-release 7 and 8 at Minecraft.net. Pre-release 8, really it was just this thing about large ferns only dropping one small fern when harvested when they really should drop two. And then a lot of player hand eating weapon animation fixes. There are just a bunch of glitches and stuff like that.
Yeah, just making everything look a little more consistent.
Yeah, it's really funny because I've not noticed any of this kind of stuff, and I didn't know about these bugs until, like, I feel like some of these bugs have been introduced in the snapshots, which is very strange, considering that what they're doing usually has nothing to do with hand animation that I know of, so it's odd, but it's nice to see all this stuff kind of been wrapped up. But I know that you had a few things to say about the release candidate now that it's here.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's going along with a trend I've noticed with Mojang communicating more clearly with players, which is something that I really appreciate. So at the start of the main post for the 1.16 release candidate, they've said previously the last pre-release was in fact the release candidate, but now we're making that more clear by changing the name to be release candidate, which means if there are no major issues following this release, no further changes will be done before the full release. So effectively this is pre-release 9, but they've marked it release candidate just to say if you guys don't have any major crash issues, if there are no exploits that will, bring servers down or something like that, this is going to be it. The Nether update will look like this. And of course, clarifying that it was still due for release tomorrow, Tuesday, June 23rd. So I think this is great. I don't really have much else to say about this. There's a few more fixed bugs, which are mainly due to crashes that were found. So there was... aside from that, there was a fixed issue with nether surface generation, which was causing floating lava and some crimson forests spawning without nylium. But then there were 3 crashes. Using a stone cutter was crashing the game under certain circumstances. Mobs stamping on turtle eggs causing the game to crash. And then a crash on world startup after you'd been playing in a previous snapshot. And those have all been taken care of as well. So really just getting the major issues out of the way. The only outstanding crashes that they can fix before the full 1.16 release. So we have potentially a full update going out tomorrow, and yeah, I'm just itching to play at this point. I'm just looking forward to it at this stage.
Yeah, I have to come up with my own plan because I'm likely going to be holding off a bit until the dust settles on the full release, as I play mainly on a server. On the Citadel, and I have not just my own gameplay, but the gameplay of many other people to consider, as well as of course, you and I both run community servers of our own.
Yes.
And wanting to make sure that updating those servers happens at a time when it doesn't break anything or screw around with any kind of stuff. So there might be a day or two between tomorrow, the release day, and when the Citadel gets an update. However, I also have had that itch because I popped into a 1.16 release candidate 1 world on my iMac before the show and walked around for a bit. Flew around on creative a little bit. Didn't do anything, didn't build anything, didn't even touch a block. Just kind of was looking around. I was in the overworld. I didn't go to the Nether. Because again, it was just for a few minutes. Mainly, I wanted to check out what has been a long-standing frame stutter on the Mac. Which is different from the issues that I'm having locally with my PC. The Mac, it was a game thing. This frame stutter bug is much better. There's still something wonky going on, and I can't exactly tell you what it is, but it feels strange. It did not feel smooth, and the graphics settings were unchanged. I haven't, when you load up a pre-release, it just brings in your settings from your last gameplay.
Yeah.
It doesn't change anything. So it's still a little bit clunky there, but again, I was in there for a minute. I didn't do anything, I didn't mind anything, I didn't actually play. With all the fine tuning that happens behind the scenes between the release candidate and the release tomorrow, considering that the release candidate was several days ago or more, I'll hold any kind of real criticisms or troubleshooting and stuff until after the actual game comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you never know, they're probably fine tuning all the different things that really don't have much to do with bugs, but they just might have to do with performance and just fine tuning things. But I was pleasantly surprised that it's not going to give me a headache to even just go in and get screenshots for our show notes.
Yeah.
So that's good. I mean, it obviously things are smoothing out and improved beyond 115. I mean, 116 is better than 115 was performing on an iMac, so that's good. For me, I think I might actually play in a single player world for a little bit. I want to obviously play 116, having to wait for the server for the dust to settle to update that. I might just open up a 116 world and get that new world smell both in and out of my system.
Mm-hmm.
So then when I go back to the Citadel, I'll be like, oh yes, Elytra and all the diamond tools I ever wanted with mending. I'm good. But there are some, I think, advantages of going into a brand new world when a new version of Minecraft comes out. I know a lot of people often start new things, new worlds and whatnot. I don't see it as often with content creators, but I see quite a bit of gameplay like that with our listeners. Will often say we've reset or I've started a new thing or whatever, because sometimes it's just fun to start clean if you don't have anything precious in an older world, or if there's a lot of things that break in your older world, and it's like, well, hey, I'll just start brand new. So I'm looking forward to probably doing a stream this week where it's just like me, a 116 world, not the Citadel, just kind of like we'll start off and see how far we get. And in a way, it's going to be a good way to test my systems locally, not just test Minecraft, but test to make sure that I can do the things that I want to do as far as streaming goes and all that kind of stuff with 116. But also, sometimes things come up that you just can't read in show notes or read in patch notes. You just have to kind of just play the game for a few hours and see what that feels like. And then we have new people coming into the podcast all the time, and there's new people coming into Minecraft all the time. I think it would be good for me to experience that early game, just to kind of relate, when we have questions on the show. So I'm looking forward to it as well. I think there might be a beeline for Obsidian and another visit in that first world. It might be just like, I'm going to live in this dirt hut for now until we can get to the Nether and then explore and see what's going on there.
Yeah, at least you can be guaranteed that the Nether is going to be there, because I think that was when you started with 115 looking for bees, and you were like, well, there's like one bee nest here because they were so rare at the time. And I think at least this time you can be guaranteed to launch yourself into all of the new Nether content as soon as you step through that portal, which is great. I've already seen a lot of people being like, RIP anybody who has a Soul Sand Valley spawn the first time they step through a Nether portal, just immediately surrounded by ghasts and skeletons. But that's the way it will go. I'm of course going to be working on trimming down the Nether chunks in my world, basically end of today. Probably in preparation for the world download, actually, just so that I can take the file size down a little bit. But then I will be generating the Nether, seeing what's out there, and probably streaming it on Tuesday, just looking for I might start the Chopping Tuesday instincts might take over, and I might start trying to farm some of the new wood types and everything, so I have a decent stockpile of those. And
nice.
Swing a diamond hoe at a couple of these trees and see what happens, because that's going to be I think that's the thing that's what's going to take me by surprise. Like, I know all the major features, I have a good idea of what all the mobs are and what the kind of ins and outs of some of that stuff is. It's the quality of life stuff that is going to take me by surprise and be a constant delight. Like, I am still reeling from the fact that they allowed you to shift click stuff into crafting tables now. Makes crafting dispensers and fireworks and stuff so much easier if you've got a 3x3 grid available to you. It's very, very good. And that's such an odd little quality of life thing that's always made a difference for me. And it's the same with being able to middle click stuff in survival to pick block, which is something that I think only came in like 1.10, 1.11. It was a couple of years into me playing the game on PC. Absolutely changed the way I build. So there's always little stuff like that they're improving that just takes you completely by surprise. I think that's some of the stuff Olraf has been exploring on streams, is like wish lists of quality of life features and just like ticking those boxes. So that's super cool. We have a little bit of stuff to look forward to here. And didn't you wanted to say something about the Nether Fortress bounding box fix, which is not coming in 1.16, but the changes to like farm spawn stuff, right?
Yeah, I didn't misunderstand, but I did sort of misspeak on the podcast last week, in that the bounding box for the Nether Fortress, there's two kinds. There's the big bounding box, which covers the entire fortress as it lays in the world. It's a huge rectangle and doesn't have a lot of intricacies to it. It's just a really large box. That is where you can no longer or will no longer be able to place nether bricks to then get nether mobs to spawn. I had said that they will only spawn on what you see in the game, which is like the nether crossroads, the nether pathways, the nether fortress itself. That makes a lot of sense. That was actually incorrect. The fortress farm that I have built on my server, as well as a number of other people I also know have built it on their servers and stuff, those will still work. The crossroads that makes like a plus sign actually has a small bounding box of a square. It's not a plus sign shaped box. It's actually a square, and you can still build out the platform in that area, but it's much smaller. It's only, I don't know what it is. It's like 13 by 13 or 12 by 12 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not big compared to the other areas. So the new Wither Skeleton farm, the fortress farm that I have, will not break. It will probably, the spawning rates might change, but the process in which mobs are going to spawn in it will not change. My old Wither Skeleton farm, so the one that was designed by Tango Tech, where you run along the daylight sensors and you can kind of grab the eye line of a bunch of skeletons and like kite them to the end.
And the point of it
that's not going to work.
And the point of it is to make something where you can run basically the length of your nether fortress
Yes.
in the larger hitbox, but not the smaller one. I would encourage anybody who has not seen it to look up Bounding Box Outline Reloaded, which is a Java mod that allows you to take a look at the hitboxes of things. I've used it in a couple of episodes where I made a Wither skeleton farm in the survival guide. I know Tango has used it to demonstrate some of the stuff with those farms that you're talking about, and it really helps you understand not just the way hitboxes work for the purposes of making these farms, but also how the game generates the structures and how they fit together with that sort of jigsaw style. Because the bounding boxes, it's like if you've ever used a level editor in, say, like, I'm going to pull an example from my own experience, the Tony Hawk's skateboarding games, right? The Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games. If you design your own skate park, it gives you a bunch of components to do that, but it will draw this kind of wireframe box around it, which is not the model of the thing you're placing, but it's just, this is how much space this is going to take up, and you can't place anything else in the same area. And that is what you see when you open Bounding Box Outline Reloaded in one of these worlds, is you see a bunch of segmented boxes which actually contain all of the pieces of the Nether Fortress as they generate. And that's a really interesting way of, for a start, looking at level design, if you're interested in stuff like that, but also just to see how Minecraft chains these things together, where those crossroads develop, and then again, for gameplay purposes, getting a look at exactly where the bounding boxes are going to be for the farms that we will now presumably need to make at some point in the future. Once again, not in 1.16, but at some point in the future, we'll need to be making that entirely inside of the bounding box of those fortresses.
Moving on to chunk mail, it's actually going to be a chunk mail dispenser episode this week because we don't have a lot of stuff to talk about in the release candidate. We're all just going to have to wait and see what happens tomorrow. We have a number of emails this week, though, all related to either Minecraft or Minecraft Dungeons, which is great. It's a really cool mix. The email for the show is spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. I didn't get to it, I don't think, in this particular batch, but there was an email that said that, hey, I had trouble finding your email on the website, and I've had that feedback from a number of other people, and it has always been there. It's always been in the show notes for each individual episode, but now at the very top of thespawnchunks.com, there is a contact button that will take you to a page on the site that has the email as well as an email form. You can just email us right there, or you can email us with your own client with spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. Please send us an email in the body of the email. If you put your email in the subject line, we're just going to delete it because that's not how you write email. And when you're using these forums, the forums organize that information differently. So you put it in the body of the email because if it's just a subject line thing, we're not going to be able to get to it. John, you want to grab the first one?
Absolutely, yeah. I thought it was going to be a good opportunity to clear out the mailbag before we inevitably get a bunch of opinions about the Nether update coming into the inbox. So this first one comes in from Idle Knight 6, who is a community miner in our Discord. Thank you so much for your support. The subject being renewable resources. It just says, hello guys, you may have seen in the Discord that a few of us were talking about renewable resources, and I feel it's just a really nice idea, just it would be hard to implement in the game. What are your thoughts on this, and how do you think it could be added into the game? Thanks a lot, Idle Knight 6. And I think there's been a lot of discussion about renewable resources lately, especially with people considering what's renewable in the Nether update, what is not, what you can get hold of in large quantities. Sorry, there's a plane going over right now. It's really, really loud. So there's been a lot of discussion about this in the Discord about what's renewable and what's not, and some people were also talking about how it would be better to obtain items in a more humane way, because I think it might have been Dosage who brought this up, but the fact that bedrock iron farms basically also spawn cats. So if you don't want to like end up killing a bunch of cats in lava along with the iron golems, then you have to figure out some way around that. And I feel like it's something that Minecraft has been maybe trending towards a little bit lately, is the idea of a more humane approach to these things. We saw it with 1.14 making changes to villagers and allowing the professions to be recycled, which everyone thought at the time was a sort of an easy exploit, but ultimately just meant that you weren't killing villagers en masse to get the trades that you wanted. And
Right.
I wonder if there is some sort of approach, and like Idle Knight says, it's kind of difficult to implement in the game, but if there could be a more humane approach to harvesting resources like iron that maybe goes down a different route than trading. The Minecraft wiki, and I'll put this in the show notes for you, the Minecraft wiki has a list of non-renewable resources at minecraft.gamepedia.com, which does not list sand, which is my big point here, is that like I still consider sand a non-renewable resource. Obviously, it's available in large quantities in deserts, and you can get it from the Wandering Trader, but I don't consider the Wandering Trader a renewable source of sand because it doesn't show up reliably, and he never has the trades you want. There is no way of like forcing him, as far as I know. There may be some sort of game manipulation RNG thing that the folks on Prototech have been able to do, but like I don't know that when the Wandering Trader is going to stop by with red sand or the kind of stuff I need, so I don't always count on that as being a reliable thing. Same goes with gravel, and sand and gravel obviously being the main components for you know, concrete powder and that kind of stuff, kind of necessary for some of the more recent builds that people have been attempting. So I don't know, how do we feel about this list, and do we think there are ways in which some of this stuff could be made more easily renewable?
Well, one thing that I was thinking of that came to mind that's not on the list that I can see are lily pads.
Yeah,
Are
lily
they
pads are renewable through fishing, and this is one of the reasons I think
Oh, that's what it is.
there was a little bit of community pushback about the nerfs to AFK fishing, and people were asking, you know, sure, we understand you not wanting to get a bunch of mending books and stuff, but lily pads were considered a treasure item and not a junk item. And so I think that's why some recent changes to lily pads were made, because people still wanted to be able to farm them en masse from fishing, and you can't really exploit a whole bunch with a lily pad unless you're some sort of genius. So yeah, I think it's technically renewable. It's on there. It takes a lot of effort, of course, but it is still a farmable thing.
And I think in some ways you can get some things multiple ways in Minecraft, right? Like you can get, you know, I'm blanking right now, but there's some things you can get in different methods. One thing that could be kind of cool, we know that they've talked about adding frogs to the game. Now, I'm not talking about killing frogs. I'm talking about, well, what if you created a habitat where frogs could live happily, and if they were happy, they would generate lily pads to live on that then you could come and take, and then they would generate more lily pads as they had, you know, an environment that they could flourish in. Feed the frogs, you know, get lily pads. That could be kind of fun. You know, because I mean, and kind of makes an obvious connection between frogs and lily pads, which I think a lot of people make, right?
Yeah, and also promotes taking care of the environment in a certain way, if you're like looking after the frogs in a way.
Wetland preservation, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's good to introduce themes like that into the game for people who want to play like that, and make stuff like that available to peaceful players. I remember one of the questions I got for this 303 questions episode was like, how do I make the most out of playing in peaceful? And it occurred to me that, yeah, peaceful players were only able to farm slime as of the 1.14 update, because that introduced pandas who could sneeze for you to get or was that 113? I forget where the pandas came in at this point, but it also introduced the Wandering Trader being able to trade you slime balls, which once again, not the most reliable source, but possible. And before that, they were having to go and find jungle temples to scrounge up sticky pistons because there was no other way of getting slime. You could craft pistons, but not the sticky variety. So it's really quite strange to realize the different aspects of the game that are going to be affected by any change like this, whether it is, a change to hostile mobs being able to drop something that's not going to affect peaceful players at all, and if it's, how it works with people's different gameplay styles has to come into consideration. And so I wonder, with another source of iron being zombies. That's, it's a slower, obviously, farm because iron ingots are a rare drop and they only drop one at a time, but you can, with enough time and patience, farm a zombie spawner for a small amount of iron. And if that's a more acceptable route to you than killing iron golems because of, iron golems feeling a little bit more sympathetic as a character, then that's one way you can take it.
I know we've talked about gravel and sand, quite a bit, especially with our experience with Skyblock, where they give gravel to zombies and sand to husks as a either always drop or potential drop. I can't remember which. Do you remember which?
It's effectively like it's a relatively common drop. You only get one at a time, unlike multiple rotten flesh. But I'm pretty sure, if it's a zombie, it drops gravel maybe like 60% of the time. It's a pretty common thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, having something like that is great, but again, doesn't do much for peaceful players, as you mentioned. I've seen it before in modded Minecraft. We have the Composter now for turning plant matter into bone meal. I kind of wonder if there's a way that they could implement some sort of sieve or sift or a crafting recipe that would allow you to then create gravel from cobblestone.
Yeah, a crusher of some kind that grinds it down. Yeah.
Or we have a grindstone. Grindstone is currently used for removing enchantments, but I wonder if there's a way to implement something like that. As far as making gravel and sand could just be gravel is the first step and sand is the last step, which is like a geology lesson because that's how it really works.
Yeah.
You just get stuff that's pounded down by, wind and water erosion, and that's how you get gravel and sand in real life. So I think that would be a way to do it, especially if it was something that, I think the trick there is that you'd have to make it a way that players could then get more gameplay out of it. So not just a make go button. You don't want to just craft stuff. I feel like if there was a way to, similar to how people make auto smelters where you have to build this big contraption, you feed in the fuel, you feed in this item sand, and then you get glass coming out the other end. If you had a crusher block or a some way of turning cobblestone and dirt into sand or into gravel, and then you'd have to say, well, this is great, but I don't want to sit here and craft it in a crafting bench one at a time. I would rather hook up some sort of elaborate contraption that would allow me to do it en masse, similar to how people have developed concrete makers that turn the concrete from powder into concrete and then turn the concrete into collectible blocks, usually these days by TNT, because the changes to TNT allow people to drop the block as opposed to destroying it.
Yes.
And I think that kind of an implementation for some non-renewable resources currently would be great. Some of the other things on this list I'm not so sure about. I'm torn. I would love to have renewable shulker shells naturally in Minecraft. We have them on the Citadel because we have a data pack, but it's not easy. It's really time consuming. It's the Voodoo Beard Shulker data pack. And for shulker shells, how do you feel? Do you think that shulker shells, having 300 shulker boxes, is that an end game pat on the back that you need, or would you much rather have a way to build a shulker farm somewhere?
See, personally, I have no issue with it in a single player world because I'm the only player on the map, and I just think of multiplayer servers where there can be so many active players at once and so many people wanting shulker boxes, some people hoarding them for themselves because they don't, they don't want to sell them, or if people sell them and they get bought really quickly from people who don't feel like they're able to go out to the end and find stuff themselves. And servers are constantly taking the measure of going into the world files and resetting the dimensions so that they can respawn all those end cities. I think ultimately having a solution for that in time would be good, but I don't know what that looks like, and I don't know how it leads to game balance as a result. You still want that focus on exploration in the end, especially while the end is otherwise fairly barren. I think maybe having some sort of renewable shulker mechanics in an update that makes the end more interesting to explore would balance things out a little better, because then at least you have an incentive to go out into the end islands that isn't just, I need to find the next end city. And at that point, making shulkers renewable would be okay, because then that's not people's only reason to go there. So that you got to consider almost like, the gameplay side of things as well, where the update is going to take you from there. One thing I want to point out, because I'm sure people will have pointed out my mistake by this point and be champing at the bits to let me know, gravel is going to be available from piglins through bartering in 1.16. The reason it's included on this list right now is because 1.16 is not fully out yet, so gravel is as yet unrenewable, but will be in the next update. And so I think mechanics like bartering and trading have potential to be expanded, and different ways, like obviously bartering is not the same as villager trading by design, because of the nature of piglins and the way they want to take that. So I think there's potential for other mechanics like that to surface that could potentially be the reason that some of this stuff could end up being renewable, and stuff that isn't going to break the game. Like diamond ore is on this list. I'm fine with that. There is some stuff that I think you need to be going digging for, and that's the whole point of the game, really. And
I agree.
Considering that you can already trade so much diamond stuff with armorers and toolsmiths and so forth if you want equipment, and the only thing you need diamonds for at that point is jukeboxes, enchanting tables, and rockets. If you want to make fireworks stars, that's really it. But yeah, I am very much in favor of, as we were saying, a diversity of approaches, a way of approaching things which is more accessible to players who play the game in a variety of ways, which I think ultimately means thinking about peaceful players, thinking about people who may not want to engage too much in combat. In fact, I don't know if piglins, because they have the potential to be hostile, they're neutral mobs primarily, but then they attack you if you don't have gold armor on. I don't know if they're going to be in peaceful mode. I would presume they are not. And so that limits the bartering for gravel with those peaceful players again, and you have the same problem, see? So I think, there are definitely solutions out there. It ultimately comes down to what Mojang's focus is going to be for future updates, and what avenues they're able to explore with the new additions, like they are with piglins in this update.
Our next email comes from Opofo, plans for release date. Hi, Pixel Riffs and Joel. After getting the release date for the Nether update, I went ahead and reset my Nether on my Bedrock world. I plan to live in the Nether for as long as I can. What do you guys plan on doing? Love the streams, videos, and the podcast. So for me, I think I might dabble, like I said, in a single player world for kicks while we wait to see how to best handle the server updates for the Citadel and Infinity Cove, my Patreon server. Something else that's also adding to my list, which I didn't mention earlier, is that we're also looking at switching over to Fabric for the server for performance issues and stuff. So I have a lot of things to work out. And so in the meantime, though, I still obviously want to play 1.16. And I really want to do, I think I really want to try like that single player experience. As much as I am enjoying my multiplayer experience, I've really not played single player Minecraft since I dabbled in Skyblock, and that's not even really traditionally a Minecraft. Like, it's a Minecraft experience, but it's a very specific one. And so I just haven't had that new world, do whatever I want, don't have to worry about, concessions and dealing with other people's feelings and including everyone. And I love all that, but sometimes it's just nice to stretch out and just be like, I'm going to do whatever I want.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I think might be where I want to go. And honestly, the thing that kind of sparked that idea was just minutes ago when I booted up that test world on my Mac to see the video frames and all that kind of stuff. It's actually a really good starting area. It's like a peninsula. There's a flower forest nearby. So there's dyes very early in the game. There's like a forest and a mountain, and like I'm actually pretty set in that particular seed. So I might grab the seed and bring it over to my PC and start up a single player world as my test. Tomorrow when I go to play 1.16. I covered a bit of this I think earlier in the show, so I won't repeat myself. But what are your plans?
Obviously, with resetting the chunks, I think the first thing I'm going to do is try and figure out how the new landscape fits around what I've already built. Maybe, go exploring, find those resources, and start figuring out what I want to do with the boundaries between the old and the new. I'm not going to be doing a full on I live in the Nether now survival, because one of the things I'm most excited about is bringing some of these resources back to the overworld. When I
Mm-hmm.
was texturing the mountain build over at my ski resort, I realized how little you can see the subtle variations in the grey textures that we have right now. And I think what I really need is to put some blackstone in there that is going to be used to texture the mountain that's visible from a distance, instead of, cyan terracotta blending in with stone because of the distance at which you're viewing things. It's very noticeable close up, completely oblivious to it when you're further down the slopes. So I think it's going to be fun to implement some stuff like that. But I want to give the Nether survival thing a try, and I do, thanks to the charity live stream again, I do owe people a week of Bedrock Edition videos at some point. So I
Oh.
might try and do the Nether survival thing in Bedrock myself at some point in July. I basically think I'm going to give myself a couple of weeks buffer, because there is going to be so much content to explore with the Java edition in the survival guide. And maybe even my Skyblock Let's Play as well, just seeing how far that goes in the Nether update, and what I can get hold of in Skyblock and what I can't. So I'm kind of interested to explore that aspect of it. I'm not necessarily going to spend like zero time in the Nether, because I think a lot of the materials we've been saying in previous episodes look really good in the Nether and may not translate as well to the overworld, which is really encouraging for building bases in the Nether. So yeah, really, it's just going to be a matter of seeing what's out there, and like you with your new spawn, kind of reacting to what the landscape throws at me and thinking, okay, where can I take this next? I think that's going to be the fun of it for me.
Yeah, I wanna try and do, because I've been building such large things in the city on the Citadel in Southport. I think I want to try to do some really small things. So like as a temporary single player world, I don't want to get into building a giant castle, because that just, why would I do that on a single player when I can do it
Yeah.
on the server? But I want to try, build a small hut, small farm, small area, bring some of those new blocks to the overworld. What does a crimson mushroom build look like in the overworld? Stuff like that. And depending on what those new mechanics are, and how they, I mean, heard about a lot of them, but depending on how they actually work in game, and what it's like to bring Piglin to the overworld, and Zoglins, and all that kind of stuff. Like, what does that change for early game, and like, what can I kind of explore in that way? And I think one of the appealing aspects of starting a new single player world for a new release is just like letting the wind take you, kind of like,
Yeah.
you might, when you pop into that first Nether portal, is it insta death with the Soul Sand Valley, or are you in the middle of a warped forest and have all kinds of new colors, available to you to do things with, and try to, make an enchanted mushroom forest in the overworld? Like, who knows?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff could be really fun. I think that I am curious about the textures for the stuff that I've been harping on, with Blackstone. People are familiar with my opinion on it, and I'm looking to see if I can be proven wrong. Like, I'm going to
Yeah.
grab some stuff and mess around with it in some places that aren't so precious, and just kind of like see if I can, like, like maybe it'll work here, maybe it'll work there, because um, I am thinking, like, even in this little single player adventure, I might still try to make a modern house. Like, I don't think I'm going to make like a little hut, or a little log cabin. I
Yeah.
might try to make like one of those cool looking, like, modern flat homes, with open gardens and things, and seeing if I can implement any of the black and the gray and some of the things that they've given us in another update, and see, just kind of experiment and play in a way that, again, is not influenced by the existing city that I've been designing for months. Like, I can just, like, well, if it doesn't match the city, that's fine. I'm not in it. I can just do whatever the heck I want.
Yeah, get yourself a breath of fresh air, and maybe come back to that city later with some
Yeah.
renewed inspiration. Yeah, that sounds like a plan. And yeah, there's a lot of different ways it can go now, because of the sheer variety that there is in the Nether. That's part of the most exciting aspect of it for me, is being able to take in that variety and not look at this ongoing wasteland of Netherrack anymore. Is going to be an exciting time. Let's move on to another email from William. Thank you so much, William, for an email related to Minecraft Dungeons, because that's still been happening in the background here and there. I've still been playing a little bit of it. My wife and I played some on the stream the other day, so super cool to see Minecraft Dungeons still getting some traction. And, of course, the DLC coming out some point next month as well, once we've all had time to, take in the hype of the Nether update. So this one comes in from William, and the subject is upgrading Minecraft Dungeons gear. It says, "Hi Joel and Pixelriffs, I'm a huge fan of the show and listening to the current episode while writing this. In episode 92, you talked about Minecraft Dungeons and in particular upgrading gear by sacrificing other items. I think there is already a system planned to get around people out-leveling their weapons too quickly. In the Minecraft Dungeons handbook, they mention an item called Diamond Dust, which can be purchased for the yet-to-be-implemented Mason Villager. The wiki entry says Diamond Dust is used for upgrading the power level of an item, ensuring that you can progress in the game while still using the same weapon. Do you feel like this would be a good way of balancing the system? Thanks again for the show, William." We also got a related email from Purple Ostrich, which says, "Hey there, Joel and Pix. I remember in a recent episode both of you were wondering what the names were for many of the enemies in Minecraft Dungeons. I recently found the Gamepedia wiki for Minecraft Dungeons that has all the names and pictures of nearly all the mobs in the game, although articles for each mob are still coming out. Hope that helps, and thanks for the great podcast. You guys make yard work so much more enjoyable." Purple Ostrich. Purple Ostrich is out there digging dirt with a diamond shovel, I feel like. But thank you so much for the email and for the links to the wiki, which we'll put in the show notes for you guys as well. I hadn't looked at any wiki entries for Minecraft Dungeons because I was playing it day of release, and all of that stuff was still being discovered, and the official information was coming out in the form of the book, and I feel like there hadn't been enough time for the community to really catalog all of the stuff that was in the game and get to grips with the mechanics and all of the items and everything. So, the information was still trickling through at that point. But by this stage, when Dungeons has been out for a few weeks now, I imagine that the resource that wiki has been filled out a little bit more, which is great. And this Diamond Dust concept actually sounds pretty cool. What do you think of that, Joel?
So I get mixed feelings, and the reason for that is because part of the fun for me in Minecraft Dungeons was switching to a new weapon because I had to.
Yeah.
And then discovering that I also really liked that weapon, like glaive, over a sword or an axe. I much preferred an axe over my sword because of the way that the animations worked and the spinning stuff and the multiple enemies. But then I was hesitant to give up my axe for the glaive, but then I ended up getting a better glaive that had better enchantments, and ultimately I ended up switching and really quite liking it. If I was allowed to continue to use that glaive and just up the level of it every time I wanted to, I don't know that I would really change much. Like, I feel like I might fall into that trap of, well, it's working and I can use this dust to upgrade it. Now, it all depends on how common that dust is. If it's not super common, then it might not be the easiest thing to do, and you might have to be very careful which weapon you choose to do it with. But the way that Minecraft Dungeons works and how gameplay is tied to your weapon, and then that weapon then will dictate the best kind of artifacts to use with it, I think really spices up the gameplay. And if you don't change weapons that often, the chances of you changing artifacts very often are also pretty nil. And I feel like a lot of times when I've been forced to upgrade my weapon, I realized, I have to upgrade the weapon, which means the enchants in the weapon are different, which means that the enchants on my not the enchants, but the abilities of my artifacts are either redundant or really detrimental to what I'm doing. Like if I'm no longer dealing a lot of damage, or I can't hit multiple enemies at once, bringing all the enemies towards me, bad idea,
Mm-hmm.
So stuff like that. And I had to change the way that I was rolling around, and it ended up being fresh and more fun, and just like a breath of fresh, just a breath of fresh air in the gameplay. So while I like the idea of being able to continue with a weapon that you really like, which might be more important in, say, like the adventure or the higher level difficulties where you really don't want to change that much. Maybe you want to keep on powering through. But I guess the other way to look at it is that just because Diamond Dust exists in the game doesn't mean I have to use it.
Yeah, it also doesn't mean it's going to be implemented at this point, because they haven't included it in the first release. It may be something that comes through with the DLC, and maybe the DLC justifies its existence in what other gameplay experiences it provides. Because what we know about Jungle Awakens so far is just that there are going to be a few more levels and maybe a plant-themed boss to fight at the end. And so I imagine it's going to be fairly similar to go through just with the weapons and so forth that you already have. Maybe they're going to throw a few more items and artifacts in there thematic with the update. But I don't know if this diamond dust thing is going to be part of that. There's been no official announcement. And I think the images of the Mason have just been pulled from a couple of promotional videos, maybe like E3 footage and that kind of stuff. So I think it's speculative at this point, and it's just, stuff that's been left in the gameplay files in much the same way as we find stuff like that in Minecraft happening from time to time. So, it may happen, it may not. But I do like the idea of being able to carry certain gear forward, and that was the frustration I was having with my bare fist playthrough, which is obviously not the typical playthrough, but I was finding if I didn't have gear of a high enough level, then the blacksmith wouldn't trade me too much stuff, and then I would have to equip weapons, load a level, return to the camp, and then that would up my power rating that would allow me to get access to other stuff. But then my strategy was so focused around the armor I was wearing at the time, it wasn't encouraging me to level up to the other sets of armor because I had this strategy locked in. And so if I had some means of leveling up that armor specifically, I might have had a better time in the early stages of it before I figured out the idea behind the loot grind and figured out what the algorithm of that did. But yeah, it might work out. It might be worth looking into. And I'm just ultimately really excited for DLC for that game because I had a blast with the main campaign, and additional levels, new environments to explore are going to be really interesting. If they throw some new mechanics our way too, that sounds great to me. I'm on board.
And considering the biomes that we've explored in Minecraft Dungeons already and the other biomes that exist in Minecraft, they've got some room to expand thematically, right? Like having a jungle, having a, I guess there were kind of some Badlands, but not like a total like Western theme. We haven't done anything like that. There's options for all kinds of stuff, which I think would be really, really cool. We've got one more email if we've got time. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Let's go for it.
This one comes from Pig Jockey, and it is about scaring villagers. Hi, guys. First of all, Joel, it's funny you should mention the corrupted cauldron incident in Minecraft Dungeons because the same thing happened to me with the Evoker boss battle. I think basically I died almost immediately not knowing what was going on in the first time I went through there, and then I had to adjust. But yes, I can see an Evoker also having that effect, especially because there's geomancers that happen at the same time. I'm writing in as I had an idea for Minecraft. What if villagers ran away from you when you were wearing a zombie head? This could add more life to the game and would make transporting villagers easier. Also, maybe it would have a price. Maybe an iron or snow golem would attack you when you were wearing a zombie head. So if you're coming into a village and you're trying to scare the villagers out of it into a specific direction, it sounds like Pig Jockey is thinking that the iron golem that is existing in that village would also think you were a zombie and treat you as such, which actually that would be hard because the natural iron golems, they pack a wallop.
Yes.
That would not be an easy thing to deal with. I don't know how hard it is to get a zombie head. That's like a charged creeper thing, isn't it? Because I've got the head data pack on the server, so I get zombie heads all the time.
Yeah, no, it is a charged creeper one. So you'd be able to get wither skeleton skulls and dragon heads naturally, and everything else has to be charged creeper. So that's creeper, skeleton, and zombie.
Right. Right. So gated, not an easy thing to do right away.
Yes, yeah, and we've been talking about in previous episodes better ways of herding villagers, for want of a better term. Obviously, it's not exactly the term we want to use for the human analog in Minecraft, but the difficulty in transporting them from area to area, having to do that with single minecarts, single boats, and often a lot of time and effort being put into that. Whereas if you could sort of chase them into a certain area. Imagine them ringing the bell as though a pillager raid is happening, except it's you just, in Pig Jockey's case, probably riding into town on a pig with a zombie head. I like the idea, actually, because it does have balance to it. I think that's the best thing about this, is it's not something that just benefits the player. There are other game mechanics involved with this idea. So iron golems, I guess snow golems less so, because they don't really do a whole lot, and they aren't naturally generated by villages. But I like the idea of iron golems, presenting a bit of a roadblock to the idea of you just being able to run villagers into a certain area, make sure they ran into their houses or anything like that. To be fair, right now you can make them run into their houses just by ringing the bell. So maybe that's the wrong example. But having them all run away from you down a corridor instead of having to sort of walk up to them and try and nudge them with entity collision so that they'll get into the hole you want them to get into. I think that's potentially going to be it could be a fun idea. It might be implementable via data pack as well. I'm not certain how easy it is to affect entity AI, entity behavior using data packs, but I do wonder if maybe they could be convinced somehow. There's some dark magic going into some of those data pack creations, I'm fairly certain. So I do wonder if somebody could implement that, where if you're wearing a zombie head, something like that would happen. There are a few precedents for stuff like this, for, you know, wearing something specific on your head being an interaction. The first thing that springs to mind with the Nether update present in everybody's minds right now is piglins not attacking you if you wear gold. You also have things like Enderman not aggroing on you if you wear a pumpkin on your head. And I suppose there's, to a certain extent, there's an interaction with zombie skeletons and creepers. If you wear the relevant head, then they let you get closer to them before they realize you're hostile and attack you. So you can sneak around a creeper very easily if you have a creeper head on. So there is already a little bit of mechanical stuff behind the scenes there that supports this as an idea, which is, I think, something that gives it legs.
Yeah, and I think having it gated behind, you know, the vanilla way of getting a zombie head in the game makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah, it's not too exploitable if you have to go to that length to get it.
Because I know on the show I've brought up before that it would be cool if a specific weapon like an axe, you know, playing off the Vindicator idea that if you held an axe in your hand, not to hit the villager with, but in order to make them react, they're like, wow, that's a sword. I see swords all the time, or I see bows all the time. But like, oh, an axe. Oh, you mean business. And then they would run the other way. But that, however, reminded me that they recently changed the way that villagers react to their workstations, and that how quickly they will assume one and how consistently they will walk towards one. So I'm now wondering whether, you know, you can get that villager to go those last 6 blocks from your minecart, you know, rail by just having that double trapdoor, you know, trick with a profession block on the other side of it. If they'll just be like, oh, look, shiny, and then just walk right into the hole that you want them to go in.
Maybe.
That might be possible as well. It all depends on how close they have to be to it in order to say, like, yes, I've claimed it. It is now mine. You know, like, I think they have to walk a little bit closer to it. So there might be some finicky stuff there. But that could be an easy way. If you're going to be like, if you're able to just use it, not as a permanent profession block, but just place it down and just kind of like use it to bait them along. All that kind of stuff would be interesting. It'd be interesting to experiment with, like, say, a lineup of, here's a bunch of, you know, lecterns or smithing tables or something all in a row, all 16 blocks apart. I don't remember the actual number from the patch notes, but, you know, and then, okay, well, they're gathered around this one table. What happens if you just chop away that table? And then they're like, oh, well, there's one right over there. And then they walk over to that one, you know, and just kind of like leapfrog them, kind of like the Reese's Pieces trick from E.T., you know, just kind of like lay the breadcrumbs down. That would be cool too if it was item related. I mean, this might be a little bit too easy. Again, the amount of effort going in versus the amount of stuff going out. Similar to how piglins are attracted to gold when you throw it on the ground. If a villager that already has a profession, so not an unemployed villager, but if it was a mason or a farmer or whatever, if you would put a carrot on the ground and they'd just be like, oh, hey, I want that.
Yeah.
And if you could literally make breadcrumbs, like, well, farmer, I want you 30 blocks that way. I'm just going to back up and start throwing carrots randomly and see if I can just drag you along. That would make sense. And it's more friendly, I feel, than pushing them with your, like, basically headbutting them into a hole.
It's what it feels like. Yeah.
That's one part of the game where I'm just like, it's one of the things that I very consistently will just be like, oh, Minecraft, you know, like when I'm playing, it's like, this takes me out of it.
Yeah, it's like the minimalism, the elegance of the game that you've been experiencing thus far, and then you're just like slowly shuffling this person, like kind of nudging them with your shoulder to get in this hole. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like a June bug flying into a glass window, right? It's like, bonk, bonk, get in the hole, bonk. You know, like I'm not using my words, I'm using my forehead. Just get in the hole.
Yes, and then immediately, you know, deriding the villagers for not being more intelligent, and then they're just like, well, look at you, you nudging us around. Well, folks, I think that's probably going to be it for this chunk mail dispenser, and I'm sure everyone is eager to go ahead and experience the Nether updates, and hopefully you guys have a great time of it. Let us know how that goes. That wraps up this episode of The Spawn Chunks, though you can find more information about the show and links to some of the stuff we've talked about today at thespawnchunks.com. The music for the show was composed by me, and The Spawn Chunks is proud as ever to be a listener-supported podcast, supported in part by the folks who are listening to us live in Discord right now. If you want to listen to us live in Discord, or if you just get some value out of the show and want to consider putting some value back in, you can visit patreon.com/thespawnchunks. Our community is lovely. Pledging at any level will get you into an invite to our patrons-only Discord chat. It also gets us closer to our next milestone goals, onwards and upwards. We are currently at 185 patrons, which is an increase from last week. Welcome on board, new folks. And special thanks go out to our content engineers, Cameron Segelski, Greener Canuck, JD Williamson, Yakov Nastin, and Yitz for their support on this episode.
Sharing the podcast with your friends is the easiest way to support the show. It's free. Just tell people about it. Tell people where to find it. You can find us at The Spun Chunks on Twitter and Instagram. Personal recommendations are by far the best. Next time you're standing around in a social distance barbecue in the backyard this summer, tell someone about the Spun Chunks and where they can find it. You can email the show at spunchunkmail@gmail.com. You can also go to thespunchunks.com and click on the contact link at the top of the page. You can subscribe on iTunes, Android, Stitcher, Spotify, and YouTube. And of course, leave a review in the Apple Podcast app. Even if you don't use the app, your main podcast platform may ping it for podcasts. So a quick rating on the Apple Podcast app goes a long way to help out the show. The RSS feed is linked on thespawnchunks.com, and the patron-only RSS feed is on the Patreon page, where you can listen to the render distance, the extended version of the podcast.
My name is Johnny, but online I go by Pixel Riffs, and you can find most of what I do at youtube.com/pixelriffs, where we will be stepping into the Nether update. And in the meantime, I've answered a lot of questions from my most recent video, so check it out. I stream 3 days a week on Twitch, doing behind-the-scenes work for the Survival Guide and other series. I'm also the voice of the unofficial Hermitcraft recap, which you can find through a quick YouTube search. And a quick reminder that all of my revenue for this month is going to various organizations. I will probably put a link to those in the show notes as well. Aside from that, I'm at Pixel Riffs on both Twitter and Instagram. Joel, where can people find you online?
Everything I am up to online, including my illustration and design portfolio, is at joelduggan.com. The Citadel Cafe is my podcast all about sci-fi and fantasy entertainment, which you can find at thecitadelcafe.com. Brockett and I actually talked about music last week, which was really cool. You can follow me at Joel Duggan on social media and head over to twitch.tv/Joel Duggan for a 1:16 single-player experience this week, and probably a lot of Satisfactory.
Thanks for visiting the Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite, but make sure you take a backup.